when you use the forward and backward, I gotta point it at the computer, which is there. And it should pick up. And then okay.
Hi, my name is DReebals, and my topic is the future of pancreatic cancer treatments. I decided on the topic of cancer, more specifically pancreatic cancer, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I picked something that was going to be interesting to me. Whether or not I pursue it as a future career, I thought that this would be an incredibly interesting internship to pursue, and I would learn lots about the field and the work environment and just the topic as a whole. For my internship, I got in contact with Dr. Kimberly Kelly. She is a friend of my mom's, so I already knew her previous to this internship, and she was happy to help me obtain this internship. I interned at the UVA Biomedical Engineering and Medical Science building, and this building actually created one of the biggest challenges to my internship. Every single door in this building is locked from the outside, so it's impossible to get in without a key card. And as an intern, they don't give you a key card because they don't want you accessing every single thing in that building. So you kind of had to just hang out outside and wait for somebody who is qualified to enter the building. And then you just kind of walked in behind them casually. And that usually got me in. So on the first day, Dr. Kelly invited me to the building to start my internship. She had suggested that I meet everybody in the lab. There was researchers, graduate students, postdoctoral researchers, people from foreign countries researching in that lab, and she suggested that I just meet everybody and find out what they're doing, what they're experimenting in, and what kind of field they're dabbling in. So there's people working from the early detection of cancer, the late detection of cancer, killing cancer once it's already been detected, new medicines. And so I eventually talked to everybody and found Dr. Julian Mateo's work the most interesting. He's working on the actual killing of the cancer once it's been detected. So on the first day, I met everybody, and then I quickly moved back. I was quickly invited back to the lab. So on the second day, it was just kind of a training day. I'm not qualified to use any of the equipment in the lab until you create an online training, which took up the bulk of the second day. It's a long training that takes many hours on the computer. And so once that was complete, I just did a simple task of moving mice organs into a preserving fluid so they could be researched later. And by that time, it was time to go home. So the second day wasn't really jam-packed full of new information other than just basic stuff, basic safety in the lab. On the third day, I kind of was just working as a lab hand. So I would move cells into petri dishes so they could be tested later. I would basically help him out with any other experiment that he was doing, but I was mostly setting up for the large experiment that was going to come later. And I eventually discovered what that experiment was on the fourth day. When I went back, we started working with mice. His experiment was to inject cancer cells into various mice, different types of mice, with different types of variables. So some were fed with this food, some were fed with another. And basically, once we would inject them, we would leave them for a couple days and watch them develop a cancer tumor. And then, in the perfect world, we would treat it with the plectin treatment, which he was using, which is a large protein found in all mammals. So the idea was that we would treat the tumor, and it would completely go away, and the mice would continue on with their lives. Unfortunately, treatments are not quite there yet. So many of the mice passed away in the treatment, but many did show signs of improvement. As I continued with my internship, we watched the tumors grow and we measured the tumors. By the very end of my internship, this was over a span of a couple weeks. So I got to see the tumors grow, and with each treatment, the tumor got increasingly smaller, which I thought was really interesting to see. I could watch to see how far we've come along in pancreatic cancer treatments and to see that it's actually working. For my community service, I worked with Cure Search, which is a nonprofit organization that raises and donates money to researching children's cancer. What I did was I volunteered at the walk they held in Charlottesville this year, and I did basic things, so helping them set up the walk, helping them set up signs and posters to advertise the walk, basically laid out the track, so when people got there, it was ready to go, and they could just focus on having a good time. When they got there was hundreds of people, and they all seemed to, whether or not they knew each other, they were all just one big family, all united by pancreatic cancer, which I thought, well, not necessarily pancreatic cancer, but various cancers, which I thought was really cool to see. That even though these people don't know each other, they can all relate to each other. For my legacy, I gathered a small group of friends and family to either participate, donate, or help volunteer with the activity they're holding next year. The idea of this is to kind of create a ripple effect so that those people gather more volunteers or participants or donors, and eventually we have a large group that would really benefit children's cancer as a whole. After my community service and internship, I developed my research question was, how could we get already existing treatments patients quicker and develop new treatments faster and get them out to patients now? Pancreatic cancer is already a very fatal disease, but pancreatic cancer is the most fatal. It has a 5-year survival rate of only 8%. With that being said, there are treatment options already available for pancreatic cancer, but they're pretty much hit or miss. So the first treatment option is a surgical procedure called the Whipple procedure. Whipple procedure has an 80% success rate when used in time. However, pancreatic cancer is incredibly hard to detect early, meaning this treatment option is very rarely used. Because what the Whipple procedure is, it's basically cutting off a small part of the pancreas with the cancer cells and just essentially removing the cancer cells from the body so they can no longer spread. But pancreatic cancer quickly spreads to just like beyond the pancreas, and you can't remove every single organ in the body. Another treatment option is chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is a set of drugs that can be used with either radiation therapy or surgery, but it has negative side effects such as nausea, hair loss, faintness, and it doesn't really work that often. Radiation therapy is essentially using a beam of radioactive light to kill all cells that it touches, and this is a negative side effect. It has negative side effects very similar to chemotherapy, and it has the potential to kill healthy cells in the body. So I have one large solution with 3 smaller solutions under it. My first larger solution is to use targeted drug therapy, which is in development right now. Targeted drug therapy is using a set of drugs that will essentially remove the cancer from the body. So you wouldn't have to worry about radiation therapy, chemotherapy, or the surgical procedure. Some examples of targeted drug therapy are growth inhibitors, which essentially stop the growth of all cancer cells in the body, anti-angiogenesis drugs, which stop the process of angiogenesis. The process of angiogenesis is the creation of red blood cells in the body, which cancer cells need to survive and thrive. My first smaller solution is to shorten the FDA approval process. The FDA approval process takes years to complete. And while much of that process is testing, which you can't cut out to make sure you discover all the possible side effects or downsides to a certain treatment, much of the time is just spent sitting on an FDA officer's desk, just waiting for approval. It's a large packet of papers, sometimes thousands of pages long, that just are often put off and not gotten to quick enough. My second one is to make drugs, the cost of drugs cheaper. Many drugs cost thousands of dollars, sometimes $800 per pill to be taken, which is an extreme burden on the family of the patient and the patient himself. So even if it works, you can end up thousands of dollars in debt just from this disease. One way to do this is to have nonprofit organizations step in on the research of the drug, so they can produce the drug and release it at a cheap cost, taking money from donors or other volunteers who are willing to contribute money or their time to the process. My third solution is to improve funding to labs. Many labs have to rely, all labs have to rely on federal grants or private funding. Federal grants can be hard to obtain if you're not a well-established lab. It if you're just getting started, you don't really have any research to show for yourself. You can't prove that what you're doing is effective because you've got no data and you have no money to start gathering data. So you often have to turn to private funding that are willing to give your lab a shot, which is equally as difficult. There's not many people with the funds and the willingness to donate thousands of dollars, sometimes even millions of dollars to these labs so they can get off their feet and get the equipment they need. So, future advice for Burbank seniors. Do your journals after you do, like directly after you do your internship. I did my internship over the summer, and it was kind of a shock that I had to journal about my experience. So I was kind of caught off guard and had to kind of recall what I did on every day, which is a little bit of a challenge for me. In the fall, I'll be attending the University of Virginia to study. I don't know yet. My plan is to kind of find myself at the university and eventually decide what I'm going to major in. So, questions? Go ahead, Ms. Newman.
David, do you feel like when you go to college as a result of this, that you'll continue to work in a community service capacity? Because I know that your community service is really to your project. Grown in its work at all?
Definitely. I thought not only is it for an important cause, I thought it was really entertaining and really cool to see how everybody interacted at the walk that I was at. And I'm sure there are many more events just like this that would be equally as fun to volunteer at. Go ahead, Haley.
So what's the difference between the chemotherapy drugs and the other drugs you were talking about?
Chemotherapy are like supplemental drugs. They don't treat cancer by itself. So they supplement either the surgery and help for recovery and to prevent the cancer cells from coming back. Targeted drug therapy work by themselves and actively kill and prevent the cancer cells from coming back.
Do you plan to follow up on the ripple effect of your community service?
Yeah, I do.
You pointed out a problem with the FDA that's pretty well understood. The last young lady who just spoke talked about lobbying, and I just wondered if you think there's a solution in there someplace. I know the current administration is really focused on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, a large problem with the FDA is not only the fact that they just that they don't approve the drugs fast enough for testing, is that oftentimes Europe's version of the FDA will approve the same drug, and the FDA still won't approve it because they're waiting to see how it does in Europe, which I think at some point you kind of have to trust Europe's version of the FDA to make the right call and get it to American citizens fast enough so you're not forced to go either overseas or just have no option for the drug. So I think lobbying would be a good option to kind of make a change and get the drugs approved faster.